the bill also provides for other multi-party arrangements and agreements. It will allow agreements with organizations that are not necessarily Indigenous managed, but that have broader mandates to support Indigenous languages and cultures. This could include school boards, university, post-secondary institutions, or provinces and territories. Madam Chair, this is what we mean when we talk about flexibility, about leaving it to Indigenous people to determine the best way forward. And to further support Indigenous community, we intend to establish a Commissioner of Indigenous Languages. Now let me turn to this right now. L'appel à l'action numéro 15 de la...
The call to action, number 15 of the TRC, asks that the federal government appoint, in consultation with Indigenous groups, a Commissioner of Indigenous Languages. During our engagement sessions on the legislation, many stakeholders confirmed that it was necessary to appoint such a person to a Commission of Indigenous Languages. In order to establish the creation of this position, we studied the mandates of commissioners of official languages in Canada, for example, in the Northwest Territories and in Nunavut. We've also studied other international examples, such as New Zealand. We've carefully noted the comments expressed during these engagement sessions.
The independent commissioner will provide support like data collection, record keeping, increase Canadians' awareness and understandings of Indigenous languages, look into complaints if the law is not being followed, and hold the government to account by reporting on the adequacy of federal funding for Indigenous languages initiatives. This is not about checking off a box just to say that we've done it. It's not about creating more bureaucracy. It's about providing legal protections to Indigenous languages, protections that have never existed before. Madam Chair, this bill is about the future of Indigenous communities. Along with improving access to clean water and reducing the number of Indigenous children in care, this bill is part of our larger commitment to advancing reconciliation. Last month, after we tabled the bill, we held a press conference in the National Arts Center to celebrate this historical occasion. And when National Chief Pierre Bellegarde got up to address the PAC room, he said, "Language is life. Language is life," and it really is. Without language, we lose our stories, we lose part of ourselves, and this is why the bill is so important. Et je reconnais que le chemin de la réconciliation.
And I acknowledge, of course, that the journey towards reconciliation is a long one. However, we're on the right path with this bill. Together, we will ensure that Indigenous languages are kept alive and vital for generations to come. Together, we can build a future where Indigenous children can grow up being proud of being members of a First Nation and or an Inuit culture. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
The floor is now open to questions from senators, starting with Senator McCallum, to be followed by Senator Laboucaine-Benson.
I made a mistake. I'm from Treaty 10, not Treaty 6. I needed to correct that. I have quite a few questions for this because I have a lot of concerns about this bill. And I'm going to be just reading a few, but asking if I can, if you can answer the questions and send them back in. Would that be okay? Okay. A language that is not taught is killed. And I've done a limited review of the existing programs, and there's so many gaps and that exist. When Canada endorsed the United Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, it failed to implement the commitments effectively, especially Article 14 of the Declaration. And under the Section 35 of the Constitution Act, it says that Aboriginal peoples have the right to govern themselves in relation to matters, but the one here I'm looking at is languages. And that in order to revitalize a language, which is where I'm coming from, not from promotion or protection, In order to revitalize a language, a community must restore the capacity of its speakers to transmit the language from one generation to the next, and that hasn't happened so far. I've gone to Isaac Brock in Winnipeg, and they have an immersion program, and they're having a very difficult time in many areas. We must also be aware of the situation in Nunavut, where they have 3 pieces of legislation that are supposed to assist with revitalization and protection of the Inuit language: the Inuit Protection Act, the Languages Act, and the Education Act. Unfortunately, the legislation created a complex bureaucracy that allows only certified teachers to teach Inuit, and that it'll take them 5 years to get recertified. So the language isn't being taught. I quote Aluki Kodiak in her speech given to the Inuit Circumpolar Council Education Summit in Greenland in February 2018. There are 90 French-speaking students in Nunavut. They have their own school in Iqaluit, built with funds from the Canadian government because French is an official language of Canada. Canada delivers $8,189 per francophone for language programs in Nunavut, while providing $186 per Inuktitut speaker. Nunavut is home to 90 French-speaking students, 430 English mother tongue students, mostly in non-Inuit, and 9,300 Inuit students. It is the only jurisdiction in Canada that has a homogeneous majority language that is a language other than English and French. Poorly drafted legislation can do more harm than good. And I have 6 questions that I will ask, but I think my main question is, why is this bill not accomplishing language revitalization by following UNDRIP and Section 35? And if not, then it will be just another empty box, because the word around the rights related to language, it's too vague and not specific enough to be enforceable. And it leaves control with the government. And the wording is so different from the language in Section 23 of the Charter of Rights and Freedom, which guarantees French and English language education at the public expense. And that's one of the questions and the concerns I have. So I'll submit this and ask for your response in writing to the committee. Okay, thank you.
Can I still say a few words? Or?
The chance on second round, if we have time for second round, you may get a chance to ask another question.